Trinity is measured best by the accomplishments and the achievements of its alumni, whose ranks have more than doubled in the past 30 years, but as we know, are not yet in the millions. So I'm very, very pleased to introduce Joe Armstrong, a savvy and sophisticated Texan. Is there any other kind? Whose meteoric career spans 4 decades and includes editing, publishing, and consulting stints with such successful publications as Rolling Stone, New York Magazine, New West, USA Today, Saveur, Worth, Travel and Leisure, Time, Random House Books, and network TV at ABC with anchors Peter Jennings and Diane Sawyer. Joe also introduced the daily wearing of cowboy boots to New York City. He wore them daily for 35 years, and when I met him a couple of days ago and noticed that he didn't have cowboy boots on, I said, why? He said, they kill my feet. So what he did for Texas. So Joe is a native of Abilene and came to Trinity in 1961, shortly after O'Neill Ford designed the dynamic new campus, which is undergoing a little construction. But come back at midnight and you can see it finished. So. Joe was always an active and engaged student, and he went on to become president of the student body for 2 years. He says that no one else was willing to do it, but I think that President Laurie knew he was onto a good thing here, and Joe stayed on for 2 years. Joe worked hard and built, and I quote, the strongest student government the school has ever seen, according to President Laurie, with whom Joe worked very closely. Joe brought big-name entertainment to campus for the first time in 1965, bringing Peter, Paul, and Mary to perform the day that they had marched alongside Martin Luther King in Selma, Alabama. And if you don't know who Peter, Paul, and Mary is, that's okay, some of us do. And you can probably find them somewhere. Joe also built a lecture series to bring big outside thinkers and different viewpoints to the campus, and in so doing made enough money to start perhaps the first student loan fund. Joe graduated from Trinity with a degree in journalism in 1965, but this was just the start of his relationship with Trinity. He was the youngest alumni to receive the Distinguished Alumnus Award in 1976, and his 2 younger sisters, Mary, a graduate of 73, and Marilyn, a graduate of 75, are proud Trinity alumnus and join us in the audience today. Joe described his Trinity experience as profound, giving him the foundation, or the roots, and the confidence to grasp and build upon many wonderful opportunities in his life. Following graduation, Joe earned a JD from the University of Texas School of Law, and after 4 years on Wall Street, gaining business experience, he set his sights on a publishing career, and what a publishing career it has been. A self-described son of his generation, he published Rolling Stone during its glory years in the 1970s, when it was the only magazine covering contemporary American culture, written for the younger generation, written by the younger generation. And Joe, unlike some of his peers, actually does remember the 1970s. He is, after all, a Texan. Joe continued to pioneer and build city and state-based magazines and win national magazine awards for important pieces that had a big impact and made big news. He is proud that all his life he has been active in the priorities of his generation: civil rights, the peace movement, rights for women, and leading the way in raising money at the beginning of the AIDS crisis. After 42 years in publishing and television, he is now devoting himself full-time to volunteer work with Paul Newman's Hole in the Wall Gang Camp for children with life-threatening illnesses, Robert F. Kennedy Center for Justice and Human Rights, Habitat for Humanity in New Orleans, and missions to Cuba and Israel. He is also on a journey to deepen his faith. Please welcome Joe Armstrong, a true and very proud graduate of Trinity. Joe.
That was way too generous for a former busboy from the Dixie Pig restaurant in Abilene, Texas. But I appreciate it. Good morning and howdy. President Alberg, trustees, distinguished faculty, staff, families, and guests. It is an overwhelming honor for me to be here today to speak to the dynamic class of 2012. Graduates, you should be very proud of what you have achieved. I think everyone in this room is very proud of you too. So all that time in the library is paid off, and I need you to loosen up a little bit today and let me know, are you excited today? Yeah. Okay, that's rousing. Let's hear it for the parents out there who are all so proud, who are all so happy, and who are also so broke. The parents. Yes, in that spirit, I send my great love out to my entire family who came to support me here today, and especially to my beloved sisters, Mary and Marilyn, as our president said, who are also Trinity graduates. And I'm very blessed by my great brothers-in-law, Don Spence and Bob G. We are a very proud Trinity family. 3 of the happiest days in the lives of our extraordinary parents, Dorothy Dell and Joe Armstrong, were when each one of us received a degree from this great university. The only regret I think my father ever had in life was not being able to go to college. So he did everything to make sure we could. I set foot on this ground more than half a century ago, but walking through the campus yesterday, I felt I was 18 again. And what a wonderful feeling. There was a gigantic vision behind the building of this great university, its facilities, its faculty, and of course you, its students. Today, the Trinity campus is breathtaking, but even more significant is the reputation of Trinity and how it has grown. Every year, the degree that you are going to earn here today, like my own has, will mean more in every way. That has always been what the Trinity tradition is about. Today, a Trinity degree is respected and honored and revered throughout the world. So how did I do here? Well, right from the start, I got top grades in my major, journalism, but there were a few challenges along the way, even for someone who received an honorary Phi Beta Kappa. Yes, I did fail ROTC. It was required to. They said for not cleaning my weapon often enough. And also they said I should not have kept calling it my gun. I had to repeat it. And then, of course, I barely passed Spanish, which was the language requirement I needed to receive a Bachelor of Arts degree. Frankly, I picked Spanish because I love the food. It's on all the menus, and how hard could that be anyway? Little did I know that Spanish was and would continue to be one of the most important languages in the world. Well, a few weeks after Buenos Dias and Como se llama, Spanish got really hard. Verb conjugations, yikes. So I hired tutors, devoted endless hours of boring in the language lab here at Trinity, and I spent an entire summer at Instituto Tecnológico de Monterrey, which we call Tamale Tech. Anyway, I barely made it to the final semester of Spanish, and passing the final was my only barrier to a Trinity degree. My very smart and maximum fun nephew, Adam Spence, recently recalled hearing something I'd completely forgotten, that I had the moxie to wear my graduation cap, tassel, and gown to the final exam. Buenos dias, desperation. And hey, I did go into the communications business. Say, President Alberg, people keep asking me if I'm going to get an honorary Trinity doctorate today, and I was sure hoping it would be in, well, Spanish. I did suit up just like last time. And speaking of Spanish in schools, my great friend Ann Richards, who was the second woman governor in Texas history, used to quote the first woman governor, Ma Ferguson, who in 1925 followed her impeached husband, Pa Ferguson. When Governor Ma was asked if Spanish should be taught in all the schools, she said, quote, "Hey, if English was good enough for Jesus Christ, it's good enough for the school children of Texas." Can you believe that? Besides, this is true. Besides my bumpy time with Espanol, my Trinity years really were the best I had ever had. My family moved around so much in the early years that the first time in my life that I ever started even with every other student was here. We were all new at the same time, and it made all the difference in the world for me. Not only did I make lifelong friendships that have always been very important, like a few who are here today, Trace Clayberg, who was the greatest roommate I ever had, along with a great friend, Miles Cortez, Barbara and Mark Stevens, Jim Dickey, and Bob McLean, who we all looked up to. But I also became very close with professors and staff who taught me and guided me so much. I would turn to them whenever I was in need. Now let me give you one little funny example of what the school and the world were like in my day. I remember being in the student union my freshman year with a terrible headache. Some pals gave me a couple of aspirin. I went down to the dorm to take a nap. When I got up all groggy and went to the bathroom, I looked down and I was turning the water blue. I had never heard of that before. I thought, I must be dying. I'm gonna die. Did I call a doctor? No. Did I call the infirmary? No. I called my biology professor. Hello, Dr. Murray, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm a little scared. I'm really scared. My pee is blue. Well, he asked a bunch of questions, and then he said, has anyone given you anything? I said, no, just 2 aspirin. Well, he said, and by then I was turning red because the joke was on me. And speaking of turning red, to show you one more thing from my Trinity years, this time I turned very red. I took a painting course. Standing at our easels and without any announcement or explanation, a middle-aged woman in a raincoat walks into the middle of our circle and drops it all. And of course, my jaw dropped to the floor because she was totally nude. Now remember, this was the early 60s, which was pretty much like the 50s, which was very conservative times. I was very self-conscious also being the only guy in the class, and I was doing okay right behind the model until the professor said, please bend over and grab your ankles for an extended pose. I quietly asked my professor, would it be okay if I went outside and painted trees? True story. I wish this story were over, it's not.